the process of becoming healthy and creating a lifestyle for yourself where you're showing up for yourself in a powerful and healthy way every single day, where you declare how it's going to go and then you make that happen, that builds confidence in yourself. And when that happens, that starts to unlock the possibility of what else you can create in your life.
I study the patterns of the universe.
That's just in the brain.
Virtual your mind. Talking about your life, fundamental principles,
philosophy.
What is and what is not true.
Those who know themselves.
Being better every single day.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Think Grow podcast, where personal development meets real life. I'm your host, Ruben Chavez, and on this show I explore a variety of topics with thought leaders, researchers, nutritionists, psychologists, creatives, entrepreneurs, and all sorts of interesting people, with the goal to bring you different perspectives that you can use to enrich your mind and improve your life in whatever way you see fit. And today I'm speaking with Daniel Thomas Hind. Daniel is the founder of EvolutionEat, which is a company that helps people permanently change the way they eat and adopt a healthy relationship with food. Now, this is a topic that I haven't really covered a lot on this podcast, and it's ironic because food and nutrition and diet and just what to eat, this whole subject matter, this whole set of topics has been such a huge part of my personal development journey and evolution, I would say, as a person. And I go into detail about how this is the case in my conversation with Daniel, but suffice it to say that in another life, I could have easily gone down the path that Daniel has and been doing the work that he's doing right now, because it's so in line with my background and with my personal beliefs about diet and nutrition. And I wanted to bring Daniel on this podcast to kind of introduce this topic to you guys, because it's something I want to talk about more often and integrate more into the conversation. Because the truth is, you can't live a good life or talk about living a good life without talking about health. I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson who said the first wealth is health. And that's vitally important to grasp, and I think it's very true. So I'm really proud to have Daniel on as the first guest to introduce this topic. There's a lot more that I wanted to cover in this conversation because it's so important to me, but I think we cover some good ground and at least start the conversation. There are two things in particular that I love about Daniel's approach and why I wanted to have him on this podcast. The first is that he takes into account human nature with his approach. And that's something that a lot of dietary philosophies do not do, surprisingly, shockingly. And I liken it to kind of the same way that I don't really promote one specific life philosophy or school of thought, but instead I pull from many different schools of thought. Daniel kind of is the same way. He doesn't adhere to one specific diet, and he's not dogmatic about one particular way of eating, but instead he focuses on time-honored principles of nutrition, and he pulls from a diverse range of dietary philosophies to create custom approaches for his clients and to help them eat healthfully in a sustainable way, not just to lose weight for the summer or something like that. And so essentially I would describe his approach as holistic and integrated and realistic and sustainable. And then the second thing that I love about Daniel's work is that he addresses the fact that proper diet is notably left out of most self-development philosophies, and it's just left out of the self-development conversation in general for the most part. I think in this field, in the field of self-development or self-help or personal growth, whatever you want to call it, we often talk about things like mindset and meditation and strategies like that are very mental, and I think that's useful, obviously, and appropriate because I've dedicated a good portion of my life to doing that. But it's equally as important, I think, that we talk about the physical aspect of living a good life and about self-development and personal growth. And a lot of that has to do with what you put into your body. And I've just noticed over the years that it's very rare for those of us in these fields of personal growth to talk about what we put into our bodies and to talk about diet and nutrition. And I think the reason for that is probably because there are such a range of dietary philosophies out there, and it's a somewhat sensitive topic for many people because it's a very personal choice what you're putting into your body, and it's a very intimate act in a sense. So, but hopefully you'll find this conversation accessible. I think Daniel and I do a decent job, at least, of speaking broadly about this topic and introducing it to someone who might want to at least get their feet wet. And the last thing I'll mention before I bring on Daniel here is that you'll hear us refer to his 6-month nutrition coaching and lifestyle redesign program, which he calls EvolutionEat 180. And he also refers to his free mini course at a certain point in the conversation, which, by the way, I've taken that free mini course. It's amazing, super robust, and quite frankly, it's incredible that it's free. But if you want to know more about either of those things, either the full 6-month program or the free mini course, you can go to evolutioneat.com/thinkgrowprosper. This is actually a page that Daniel set up specifically for listeners of this podcast. And he's going to be offering some additional live training there for those of you who are interested in continuing your education and learning more about this and learning how to integrate this information and these ideas into your life in a practical way to change your relationship with food. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, again, that link is evolutioneat.com/thinkgrowprosper. Daniel, man, thank you for being here.
Ruben, my brother, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I am excited to talk with you because thus far, on this podcast and really on my blog and on my Instagram page, Think Grow Prosper, like I haven't discussed at great length the concept of diet and how that's such an integral part of living a good life and increasing our well-being. I mean, I think it's fairly intuitive for most of my people, the people who follow Think Grow Prosper, that personal development strategies and principles and things like that are key to living a good life. And so, but it's not as obvious necessarily that so is food and so is proper diet. And so I know we're going to get into all this, but I wanted to say up front that I'm pumped to finally kind of get this out there because it's been such a big part of my life for so long. And obviously I know it's a huge part of your life too. So.
Oh man, that's really exciting for me to hear because I know that this is important to you as well, health and your relationship with your own health journey and diet and so forth. And you haven't necessarily had an opportunity to speak about it. And I think, and that's what I've seen in this space of personal development, self-development, entrepreneurship, et cetera. For something that is so critically important to our general well-being, our energy, our sense of what's possible, our confidence, that is our health, it's often never spoken about. It's often never addressed. And to me, that's, it's baffling because our health is the baseline to living a meaningful and successful life. And like I always resort back. I love Maslow, and if anybody isn't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a theory of psychological and emotional health that's predicated on fulfilling innate human needs and priority from the bottom up, culminating in self-actualization at the very top. And so it goes your health, then safety, then love, then esteem, and then self-actualization. That's his triangle. So your health, your physical health and well-being is literally the bedrock of living a meaningful and productive life. And so no matter how successful you are in other areas of your life, without working on your health, without looking at the baseline, then you're never going to self-actualize. You're never going to reach your full potential. And that's a little scary because, modern life is really stressful. There are endless responsibilities, distractions, and stimulations coming our way at every given moment. And we aren't given the tools to really channel all of that energy coming our way. So what we end up doing is coping more often than we would like through food and through eating. And yet it's often not talked about, right? Like, we often don't talk about our relationship with food and diet and health. We're obsessed with dieting and looking great, but we don't talk about our relationship with food. And through the work that I've been doing through my company EvolutionEat over the past nearly decade, what we teach is that you can't be healthy without having a healthy relationship with food. And I think a lot of people don't consider that they even have a relationship with food. They often, people who have never heard that before, they say, what are you talking about? And so, like, my mission is to make health a lifestyle that anybody and everyone can accomplish. And we have to start by looking at your eating habits, by looking at your relationship with food, because you literally cannot be healthy without having a healthy relationship with food. And there's so much loadedness around food, eating, dieting, that it's a beautiful opportunity to look at as an opportunity to do the deeper work for your personal self-development, right? For your growth as an individual and all that you want to accomplish in life.
I totally agree. You said so much there that I want to unpack and get into a little bit more. I wanted to, before we do that, kind of give the people listening a sense for who you are and why you're doing the work you're doing and how you got into it. So can you kind of give the nutshell, condensed version of your story?
Like I said, I'm the founder of this company called EvolutionEat, which is a transformational diet and health coaching company. Health is critically important to me because of my childhood. So the quick and dirty on me is that I grew up overweight. I grew up the husky kid in my class, and like the joke is the joke that I said to everybody who's never met me before is that I'm a former fat Italian kid from Long Island, New York, and while I'm no longer fat, I'm definitely still Italian. And so in my family, food equaled love, and there was a lot of love growing up, if you know what I mean. And not to mention, only child in a home where both of my parents worked full-time jobs. They were both careerists. And so as an only child, I was left to myself a lot. So the setup is my mom, who's the Italian one in the family, God bless her heart, she's saturated me with love, oversaturated me with love. And I got all the attention as the only kid. And yet at the same time, there was a lot of, so food became an extension of that love. And it became a way that we organized as a family. And because I got all the attention, I just loved food. So I ate all the time. But yet at the same time, because both my parents worked, I was left to myself a lot. And food became friend. Food became entertainment. It was something that I knew would make me feel good. And, I could depend on my friend in that way. And I'm purposely using this language because that's that's what I mean by a relationship with food. It's something that we depend on, that we rely on, that we resort to because it makes us feel good. And so I grew up that way, constantly looking to food to make me feel something, maybe because I was bored or I was lonely, or on the flip side, because I'd done well at school and I was an overachiever and food always became my chosen reward. I mean, do you remember, do you remember the excitement that you felt every time driving up to the McDonald's drive-thru with the Monopoly game? Do you know the Monopoly game? I mean, that was the most brilliant marketing scheme on the planet, where you gamify eating and get the whole family addicted, right? Like you get the whole family addicted. And so, God, so the result is I was fat. You know, I grew up a fat kid. No big surprises there. I wasn't obese by any stretch of the word, but I was overweight. And I went to this little Catholic school, and I wore the husky size. That was literally the size that they gave me, husky, which I don't know if, like, I don't know what horrible person came up with that one, but husky isn't a size, right? Like, that's not actually a size. They're small, medium, large, but I was husky. That was what it said on the tag for my uniform. And so, you know, you try to laugh it off as as a little kid, because you get made fun of. You get, especially, you know, I played soccer, so despite being overweight, I never let it get in the way of, you know, just me living a normal life. But you would get made fun of, and taking your shirt off when you were like at the beach or playing skins, you know, for sports, and being made fun of for having the man boobs or whatever the hell they would make fun of you for. It's you get used to being embarrassed. And so when you're fat, embarrassed is an identity that you wear on a regular basis. And it really hurts, especially as a kid. Being fat changes the way that you relate to yourself and to others. And you have to learn how to deal with that. And so I did. I learned how to deal with it. Like I said, I didn't let it get in the way of my development, but it was something that really shaped my sense of confidence and how I related to being with other people. On the flip side, I was perfectly happy with being overweight because I loved food so much, and I still do to this day. I loved food so damn much, and so I grew up this way. And it wasn't until years later, fast forward to when I'm in college at Georgetown, studying for the LSATs, because I was planning to become a lawyer. That's a story for another time. So I noticed myself in the library every day, just, you know, studying to death, and I really needed to exercise that energy out. So I started getting addicted to exercise for the first time in a very serious way. And even despite like working my ass off at the gym, usually 7 days a week, sometimes even twice a day, I wasn't achieving the results that I thought that I should, based on just how much I was working out. And it was because I wasn't focused on my nutrition or diet at all. I had no education around that. And because what I learned now in retrospect is that I was addicted to food, and I didn't really know it. And it was, and I'm not alone here. I think we're all addicted to food in one way or another. And that's because we're all emotional eaters. All human beings we're emotional people. We're emotional beings, and we eat emotionally. We eat to satisfy different human needs that are usually like core needs, and we mistake those needs to be met through eating food or something like that. And then that becomes an ingrained habit and a pattern that's really hard to move on from. So I noticed this in myself years later, after I discovered the paleo diet when I was about 22, so nearly a decade ago now. and, fell in love with that lifestyle because it asked the very simple question, what did our ancient ancestors evolve eating? And I love that because I was looking around our modern lifestyle, and since we're not doing so damn well with our health and the obesity levels rising, mental health illness rising, I love that simplicity in that philosophy. What did our ancient ancestors eat? So I adopted that lifestyle successfully not because I was trying to diet down, but because I actually fell in love with that idea and living my life like through simplicity, through that stoic simplicity, and designing my choices based on that overarching paradigm. And I really got creative with it. And I think when you start to creatively relate to something that you're taking on, it becomes natural to you. And so I noticed myself for the first time naturally loving a diet, loving a lifestyle. And it wasn't because I was dieting. And believe me, I had tried dieting dozens and dozens and dozens of times in the past, none of them being successful. And so I fell in love with this lifestyle, and the benefits were awesome, right? Like I lost a bunch of weight. I stopped getting sick. My mood improved. And as somebody who grew up depressed and over anxious, thanks mom, thanks Italian family with the anxiety levels like through the roof. I noticed that my mood wasn't something beyond me for the first time. Like I could actually control my mood. It wasn't so, I grew up not sure on most days if I was going to wake up in a good mood and a bad mood. It felt like I had no choice. And now for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a choice. And it was, and the more that I worked on myself, the more I would influence, the person that I was showing up as in the world. And this was a revolutionary idea to me, and from that place, I actually got off antidepressants that I had been taking, and really felt empowered for the first time in my life. And that was really what set up the conditions for my then becoming an entrepreneur years later. But I've already spoken a lot, so I'll just press pause there before I give you the entire autobiography of Daniel.
No, it's good, man. I think that should be like the first chapter of your memoir,
Yeah.
I relate to your story a lot, and you and I have spoken in private, and I've kind of told you that in another life, I would be doing the work that you're doing. And in some parallel universe, I probably am doing the work that you're doing, because my background, I have kind of a similar trajectory, although very different reasons for getting involved in nutrition. But before Think, Grow, Prosper, I was very much in the world of nutrition and diet and even herbalism and things like that. That was my thing. And so it's just so, like I said, it's so cool to talk about these things now in the context of personal development, because it's all part of the same thing. And just to give the people listening a little background on my story, and how kind of I got here.
Yeah, and I would love to know, because I don't know. I just know that you were that you were pursuing this in some degree, but I don't know the full scoop, and I bet your listeners would love to know as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't obviously go as far as you did. It was really just more of a personal thing. I started out I think I was 20 years old or so, and 19 or 20, and I had really bad acne. I had acne like in early high school, and it kind of went away for the most part. And then it came back with a vengeance, and I was just so frustrated. I felt I was too old to be having these kind of juvenile skin problems, and I was embarrassed. There was an element of shame there,
yeah,
and an element of vanity, I would say, but shame. And so I was just spinning my wheels, trying different topical medications, of course, trying to treat the symptoms, which is part of the problem with how we approach, diet and the body in general, I think, as a culture. But I was one night on the internet just kind of exploring different solutions for alleviating my skin problems. And I came across this forum that was talking about this really weird specific diet. It was like, I don't remember the specifics. I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like 5 Brazil nuts a day and then like 4 egg yolks. And then it was just like this really weird thing, but it was in an attempt to eradicate acne. And I was like, oh, okay, that got my attention. And so that led me, and so that same night, that led me to a couple other sources. And I ended up finding the raw food diet. And I'm sure you're familiar with this. And this is from a conventional standpoint, it's a fairly extreme diet. Of course,
yes,
raw fooders or raw foodists wouldn't say that about the diet, but from a conventional standpoint, it is because it's completely vegan. There's absolutely no animal products, not even honey, for the most part. And you're eating not only that, but you're eating.
It's raw. It's all raw. You literally cannot cook anything, right?
Right. It's all completely uncooked. And so I did this for quite some time, and and not only that, but that happened that night when I found out about it. The next day, I completely went 100% raw food vegan. And it was just an overnight thing. I'm a fairly intense person and a fairly obsessive person when it comes to like change. And if I know that doing something will get me a certain result, right, I will do that thing. Like there's no question about it. And so I did that. I was like, okay, well, boom, like let's do this raw food thing because people are saying that it cures acne and that it makes your skin glow and that it gives you this magic. And I did it. And to be honest with you, I saw results like fairly quickly. Like, and here's the thing, man. I was eating the SAD diet, the standard American diet at the time, right? And I was, you name it, bread and pasta, like the worst fats possible, the worst refined stuff, the processed sugar, everything. And my whole life, I kind of always knew that diet was something I should pay attention to. I just didn't know exactly how to do it. And now I had this framework, right? And now I had this approach to food that was easy and, just don't cook food, eat it raw, don't eat animal meat. Fair enough. So I did that for a while, man, a couple years, and it cleared up some of my skin stuff. It did not make me feel the best. Constitutionally, I just need a higher protein diet, and that needs to come from animal protein. The people who succeed on a raw food diet, I've found, and I don't want to get too much into this because it's like this is going to take us off track, but the people who I've found succeed on a raw food diet are those that can do well on a high carbohydrate diet metabolically, and or a high fat diet. Like that's also a possibility. I'm neither one. My macro is protein. Like I need protein to feel good. That's just something I've found out over the years through kind of intuitive eating and experimenting, which I hope we can talk about in just a little bit. But anyway, long story short, I eventually found like a more balanced kind of approach, and came across this book called The Body Ecology Diet. And it's by this lady named Donna Gates. And it was kind of 80-20. It was kind of 80-20 diet in certain ways. And there was some portion control aspect to it. And it still was fairly strict. And there was still a pretty solid framework, but it allowed me to eat some meat, and it allowed me to get back into balance for my metabolic constitution. And that's when my skin issues completely disappeared, actually. So in between the time, I actually tried several different other diets and dietary approaches, and I've just been fascinated. I think diet's so cool because it's something that you can try at home. It's like you read about it and then you can immediately implement these things into your life and see how it affects you. And food is so visceral in that way because, if you're reading a book on personal development and maybe there's a strategy that's kind of abstract to you, and and it's difficult to get your mind around. Like, you may not implement that immediately, but if you're reading a book and it says, oh, you can cut out sugar and, eat more balanced protein and complex carbs, you can do that the next meal. You can do that an hour from now, and it's very easy. And I find that so attractive about diet. But anyway, man, that's kind of my story, and I just wanted to share that because I don't know if I've talked about that on this podcast, and certainly I haven't spoken to you about that. So that's kind of how we connect here.
Yeah, no, man, it's clear how passionate you are about this and how much of yourself you give over to this part of your life. And, and that's what this whole thing is. It's about your own relationship with the food and the diet. And if you think about it, our relationship with food is like the most intimate thing that we have in our lives. I mean, it's literally this substance that we put in our mouths, we chew, we swallow it, and then our body derives the nutrients from it and utilizes that for energy, for muscle repair, for tissue repair, for energy storage, for cellular function. It's the most, unless you have the craziest sex life, which I definitely want to hear about, your relationship with food is probably the most intimate thing that you have in your life. And we often don't think of it that way, right? We don't think that we even have a relationship with this thing. And so that's why it's so important to me, because we're engaged inside of this relationship every single day of our lives. And if we're not being mindful and conscious about it, then it's really easy to go the unhealthy route, because truthfully, the odds are stacked against us, because this food is marketed to us all the time through the apps and the online ordering and this and that, and the availability. If you live in any sort of city or any just town, the corner shop, it's always readily available to you, right? You can always get it. You can order it immediately, or you can walk a few blocks and find it. And not to mention, these companies are pumping billions and billions of dollars into engineering food to get us addicted, right? So it's like the unhealthy food that we're all caught like reaching for during times of stress or boredom or, overwhelm. That stuff is literally engineered to have us reaching for it in a certain way. So unless you are being extremely mindful about it, it's designed to make you addicted and to take over. And so it feels like a struggle to live a healthy lifestyle when there's just so much stacked against us. And if you're like most of us, we use food to cope. And this is really important. We use food to cope or to feel better when life gets hard, or when you're stressed, or when you're bored, when you're lonely. Just like I was describing as a child, right? I was purposely using that language because this is something that I discovered we all do. And even I do, even though I've adopted this healthy lifestyle, we have such a deep emotional relationship with food that we resort to it anytime life gets hard, we're stressed, we're bored, we're lonely, we're sad. And for many of us, this happens every single day, often without our even realizing it, right? And so this unhealthy eating cycle, it makes us less effective, obviously overweight, and frustrated, right? And it shows up everywhere in our lives, not just on our body as body fat, but in the work that we do, in our relationships with our significant others, with our family, with our kids, at home, with your relationship with yourself, with your sense of confidence and what's possible in life. Because when you're out of alignment with your eating and with your health, that really weighs on you. And you might not know it because maybe that's just always been how life is. It has you detached from the possibility of creating more in your life and of creating the things that are actually true to you. So if you're out of alignment with your health, I believe that manifests on the outside in really big and obvious ways. And that's why when we do this sort of work, it's as much deep work as it is skill development, as it is health transformation. And the process of unlocking the process of becoming healthy and creating a lifestyle for yourself where you're showing up for yourself in a powerful and healthy way every single day, where you declare how it's going to go and then you make that happen, that builds confidence in yourself. And when that happens, that starts to unlock the possibility of what else you can create in your life. And I love the people who we work with at EvolutionEat, because so many of them have started their health journey with us, and then through that process uncovered a whole new identity. People becoming entrepreneurs when they never had any sort of business sense before. People becoming coaches. People becoming musicians, moving across the country, moving across the world, leaving relationships that weren't serving them and finding the loves of their lives. Like, this is why I believe that your health journey is the baseline to your self-development journey. And that's why it's so important to recognize that, because when you think of it that way, your health becomes something that you can devote yourself to as a practice for the rest of your life, as opposed to some diet that you're doing for like a month long in order to lose as much weight as quickly as possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It's a lifelong practice. It's a skill. It's not a point in time that you're trying to reach. And I mean, there's a lot of parallels between personal development, the traditional idea of personal development, the think and grow rich type of personal development, and diet. There really is, because again, it's the process, right? The process, it's not the end goal. And so we're going to continue to draw these, I think, throughout the conversation. I mean, here's another one. You mentioned the food's a very intimate act, and it's like food becomes a part of you. It becomes part of your cells, right? Well, here's something that I was thinking of. We in the let's say self-development world, a lot of us say you are what you think, right? Our thoughts become things. But there's a more literal concept that we're forgetting, and it's you are what you eat.
Yeah.
And if you become what you think, you also become what you eat. Like that's something that's so true. And Marcus Aurelius, this great Stoic philosopher, but really he was a Roman emperor.
Yep.
He said the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And if you just replace a couple words there, you could say the robustness of your health depends upon the quality of your diet.
Yeah.
And so there's these parallels there that are just undeniable. And I think that, like I said at the beginning, most of us understand that self-development principles and strategies can help increase our well-being and, live a good life. But in the same space that you and I are in, and that I think a lot of people listening are in, this entrepreneur / self-development, self-improvement kind of space, this community, it seems like a lot of us ignore the fact that the food we eat is just as important to living a good life.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, why do you think that proper diet isn't talked about as much in this space?
I love that you're asking this, because this cuts right to the heart of the issue. And it's because the hustle and grind culture teaches us to sacrifice ourselves in order to get ahead, right? Almost every highly successful entrepreneur and self-starter I know goes to great lengths to bend reality in their favor, often sacrificing baseline human needs like their health and wellness, and therefore their diet, in order to get ahead in business or career, right? This is the sort of hustle that Gary Vee has popularized, and which we as a culture have kind of mistakenly glorified. But we've glorified it because, and this is the confusing part, is that it works. they're all around us. There are examples of millionaires and billionaires who burn the candle at both ends in the early days, sleeping under their desks and surviving on ramen noodles and Monster energy drinks and whatever it is that they could get their hands on in service of building up their business, right? And it's true. The thing is that it's true. In order to get ahead when you're just starting out, when you're building your life from the bottom up, you have to do uncommon things in order to become uncommon. So most of us don't know what that means other than resorting to hustling harder than we ever thought possible, demanding more from ourselves than we ever thought was inside of us. And that sort of determination is exactly why people become successful. But it's also what's holding so many of us back. And this is the high performer's dilemma, which is that the very thing that got you to this level of success will not get you to the next level of success. And really, it's not even about success. It's about you feeding yourself, you giving yourself what you need in order to become whole. And so for most entrepreneurs, and indisputably for every person that I've ever worked with, their winning strategy in business and in life that's gotten them here is this insane work ethic and this willingness to sacrifice short-term comforts for long-term ambitions. So that's the primary source of their success. And if you're listening to this and you're like lighting up because this sounds like you, then pay attention. Your insane work ethic, that's the source of your success, right? But it's also the source of your limitations. So ask yourself this question, or answer this question as I ask it. How often do you sacrifice sleep? Do you eat tons of sugar, order takeout, over caffeinate to the point of, absurdity? How often do you knock it up from your desk for an entire day? How often do you cancel social plans? How often do you numb out on alcohol or food to not deal with the stress and exhaustion and, sadness and or anger of building your business or building your career? That's the trade-off of living this all or nothing lifestyle. And I get it. You do it because you're on a mission, for your clients, for this business that you want to create, for a career that's so important to you, for then you're a team of people that maybe you've built through your business for success. And it's admirable. And I know it is because I did it myself. And last year in 2018, I burned the hell out. And I'm happy to talk about that. This is our winning strategy. And it's gotten us this far, but it can't sustain you because the cost is you. You are the cost of you burning yourself out and of you not honoring yourself. And so over time, you develop a slew of unhealthy behaviors, emotional addictions, and obsessive belief patterns, which now become hardwired habits and personality traits, right? So because you value your success over your health, you take on all of these unhealthy habits and personality traits, which means if you don't mindfully and actively try to shift them, try to transform them, then not only are you putting obviously your health at risk in the long run, but your business or your career as well, the thing that you're working so hard for, because you are the engine that drives your business and your career, right? Yeah. And so this is what I teach all of our members, all of my clients, that look, I honor your grit and your determination. I honor that. But why not invest in your health and start treating yourself like you are your most valuable asset? Because you are. So it's not an either or. It's not either health or business. It's a yes and. And that's the place that I come from with the work that we do.
Yeah, there has to be some balance point there because we've ignored it for too long. And the updated CEO the upgraded entrepreneur, like they have to be someone who is not only making an impact on the world, but they have to be holding themselves together also, and improving themselves as a person, physically, mentally, spiritually, you know. But food is a big part of the physical aspect of it. And I just think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I just think it's just about kind of, well, part of it is being able to integrate being able to integrate diet into your life and food into your life in a way that's sustainable. And there's so many components to that, you know, but like I'm at a point now, I haven't really touched on kind of how I eat because it's kind of hard to describe it in a word. But I think that I'm at a point now where I don't even really think about what I'm eating, and not in a mindless way. I mean it in a way that I've focused on the right foods for so long that it's intuitive for me. It's instinctive. It's like I know what my body likes. I know what to eat. I know the time of days to eat. I know the times of day to eat. And so it's not something that takes a lot of time from me or a lot of mental energy. And I think part of the problem is it takes a lot of bandwidth from people, especially people working on building a business or whatever it is, like whatever project you're working on, like you only have so much bandwidth. And if you wake up in the morning, you're like confused about what to eat. It's like, well, yeah, you're just going to say, you know, fuck it. Like, let's just eat whatever's here, whatever's in the house, because you only have a certain amount of energy to devote to that. So part of it is like just kind of internalizing the principles, I think, of healthy eating and of proper nutrition, and then executing those on a kind of a more unconscious competence level, you know?
You just nailed it on the head, man. That's because you're highly proficient at being healthy now. This is now we're getting into like what we teach at EvolutionEat. One of the overarching principle of the work that we do, which I think distinguishes us from a lot of other coaching or programs, or really just diet programs in general. I wouldn't consider us a diet program. It's more like a way of life. Is that your health is a lifelong skill that you must develop and practice. It's not a goal that you accomplish and forget about. So what do I mean by that? Most people approach their diet with an intention of accomplishing a goal, right? Like, I need to lose 25 pounds, right? And so there's a result that they want to create. Fine, that's no problem. If you have 25 pounds to lose, I absolutely support you in wanting to lose that weight, right? And taking on actions that help you lose that weight. I'm 100% in support of that. The problem is the process by which we go about creating that outcome. We don't think of this as a practice, as something that we want to take on for the rest of our lives. We think of it as a time-sensitive goal that must be accomplished by X date, right? And so in that way, it's kind of like cramming for a test. You might do really well on the test when you cram for it the night before, but if you have to study again for the final because you don't remember anything, then what good did it do you? That means you didn't actually learn anything. And the thing about our health and diet is that because this isn't a subject in school, but is rather something that we're focusing on whether we like it or not, or are conscious of it or not, we're doing it every day, right? We're eating every day. So why not approach this not as something that you have to do to create a result in as quick a time as possible, but as something that you get to practice and develop over the course of your life. And so in this way, this is what I mean by healthy eating is a skill. It's a skill. And to become really good at a skill, it's the same thing. Healthy eating is the same thing as playing the piano. So if you wanted to learn how to play the piano, you would have to recruit the instruction of an expert. And every day you would show up, you would learn how to move your fingers up and down the keys. You would take instruction. You would have to learn how to read the music. And then over time, you would develop a new language internally to relate to the piano. But that would take some time, right? Because you don't know what you're doing at first. So you're going to have to go home. You're going to have to practice. You're going to have to put in the work, come back, make mistakes, make a ton of mistakes, invest in correcting those mistakes instead of hiding from them or pretending that they don't exist, which is what a lot of us do with our diet and our health, right? How many times have you said, I'm going to go on a diet, and then the weekend comes around and your friends go out drinking, so you go with them, and then all of a sudden the night turns into pizza and ice cream, right? Or some variation of that, right? And then we say, oh, fuck it. It's only Friday night. And it's like, oh, fuck it. I might as well just go to town for the rest of the weekend and I'll start again on Monday. And we keep yo-yoing from like, we're on and we're off and we're on and we're off and we're in and we're out, and I'll start over and I'll start over. But like, if you were learning how to do any other skill that way, how would that work out for you? You wouldn't get ahead, because you would keep, every time you make a mistake, you're not actually investing in looking into that mistake and figuring it out, right? What if every time you were learning how to play a scale on the piano, you messed up this one triad, or this one note, and you started crying and you threw your hands up in the air and you said, I can't do this, and you stormed off. Well, like, why is an instructor helpful in those situations? Because the instructor says, sit down and let's try it again. Let's keep working it out. Let's literally keep working it out. And that's the approach that we have to take with our diet and our health, because the truth is that perfection in this area of our life is quite literally impossible. It's impossible to have the healthiest diet in the world where you never eat off the plan, because we live in a world where there's so much coming at us. It's a very social thing that we take on as well, eating, right? We eat with other people. Sometimes the food that's on our diet isn't offered in those opportunities. If we're traveling internationally, we don't always have complete control. We often don't have complete control, right? So we have to learn how to keep practicing even when we're not perfect, especially then. We have to learn to invest in the mistakes in those areas where we're not highly proficient and look at them instead of avoid them. So, for example, how many of us overeat late at night or are shoving sugar into our mouths all throughout the day? How often do we actually talk about that to other people? We're always talking about the weight, the superficial part of it, just like the Instagram photos of people with Lamborghinis, but we're not actually talking about the deeper issues of what's preventing us from creating that success that we want, right? And it's going back to this idea of we're emotional beings, and we often eat in ways to satisfy these emotional voids that we have in our life. So when you're by yourself and it's late at night and you're eating because you don't know what to do with yourself, or because you're just so stressed out and this is like your first time in the day to relax and food signals comfort to you, or on the weekends, maybe you don't have a significant other and the deeper work would be to look into the fact that you're not dating, but you're definitely eating a lot all the time, right? How often are we using this as a mask to not look at the deeper issues of what's preventing us from getting what we really want? And I'll be the first to raise my hand. I'm a single bachelor who lives here in Los Angeles, and I haven't been in a real relationship for a long time now. And, part of that is from these deep-seated patterns that I have with myself that stem back to childhood, whereby on the weekends, I'm like, oh, it's finally my time to take time off for myself, to rest a little bit. And I kid you not, and it's embarrassing to admit this, but I'm just being transparent. I still overeat on Saturday nights. It comes up more often than I would care to admit, where like I'll order food and then I'll order more food and then I'll order more food. And it just like becomes this disempowered thing that even though I'm aware that this is my pattern, it feels really hard to overcome. And it sounds funny, but I'll say it anyways. That's definitely getting in the way of me creating a relationship in my life, because weekends would be the time that I could put myself out uh, out there in the dating world, right? That would be a great time to go meet the single ladies of Los Angeles and put myself into that world, right? But I have this deep seated story with myself that, oh, weekends are my time to rest and to hang out with myself. And because as a little kid, I used to stay up really late by myself, snacking on whatever we had in the cupboard. That's still something that manifests even today, even though I'm a coach who does this and has been doing this for nearly a decade now, it still shows up. And if this is showing up for me, somebody who's dedicated his life to it, I have a hunch that it's showing up in one way, shape, or form for you too, the listener. And again, the thing that I want to hammer home here is that there's so much shame and guilt and embarrassment around this. Nobody wants to stand around the cooler on Mondays admitting that they were up all night on Saturday night shoving food in their face. So many of my personal one-on-one clients, they're executives or high-performing entrepreneurs who are traveling a bunch. I can't tell you how many of them, their biggest block is that when they're traveling and in hotel rooms, they order room service 2, 3, 4 times over again because they don't know how to be with themselves, or they don't know how to channel stress, or this is some misguided reward structure where they're like traveling and that signals excitement and newness and novelty and I don't give a fuck. And so they keep ordering the room service, or they drink an entire bottle of wine with their dinner because it's on the company or whatever. And then they just unconsciously keep eating. This happens all the time, but nobody wants to talk about it because it's embarrassing and there's shame. And you have to be able to look at these things in order to overcome them. You have to see what's really happening in order to transcend them. And when you practice coming from that place, you improve, as opposed to not looking at it and just hoping it goes away. That's like the piano player who screams and cries every time she presses a wrong note and doesn't actually look at, right? Doesn't actually look at, let's just sit down and practice the scale again. So when you practice, you improve. And when you improve, you identify more and more with your new abilities. And that's what has you gaining confidence. And then with confidence, you actually want to apply more of yourself, which accelerates your learning. And so in time, that piano player is going to be performing solos, but only after she's mastered the basic principles and feels comfortable making mistakes and looking to those mistakes for feedback to practice some more and improve. And over time, if you adopt this approach to your health and your diet, then your relationship with your health, with your diet, and really ultimately yourself will transform. And your short-term goals of weight loss or whatever it is that you want, those are going to occur effortlessly. Just like you talked about, you eat healthily effortlessly now. It's just intuitively who you are. You don't have to think about it because that's how you identify as a healthy person who eats healthy things. And that's literally a part of you. I would have to like zap you with some sort of the device in Men in Black where you forgot about who you were in order for you to start eating unhealthy foods on a daily basis now, because that's so foreign from who you are and who you identify as that we would literally have to lobotomize your brain in order to get there, right? And so the last thing I'll say is for people who have never consistently eaten a healthy diet or who have been overweight for their whole lives, they don't understand. What I often hear reflected back is that they can't relate to being the sort of person who is eating that way all the time. The ideas of salads or, whatever, like salads, salmon, these sort of things. It's like, I would never be that sort of person. And what I'm trying to express is just like if you were practicing the piano on day one, you would have no idea how to play anything. And the idea of playing Mozart, for example, would be such a foreign concept that if you only focused on how far away from it you are, from the end goal, you're already going to write yourself out. But what if we just took it one step at a time? And what you learn through that process of improving and developing is that you intuitively, creatively fall in love with that pursuit, right? People who play the piano 40 years later after they learned it as a kid, who are still playing, they play because they love it. They don't play because their parents told them they had to do it as an 8-year-old. They play because they love it. They identify as a musician. And in the same way, you can literally teach and practice yourself into identifying as a healthy person who does healthy things for him or herself, which then has you naturally being healthy and losing the weight if you have weight to lose, and showing up for yourself in a way that you only might now aspire to, but it's possible.
That is a huge component of it. I'm in the middle of reading James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, and part of how you change habits is you change your identity. I'm not just, like you said, I'm not just someone who sometimes eats healthy. I am a healthy eater. Like, that's just who I am. I just eat healthy food. Like, for me, I don't say this to like brag or anything. I mean, this is something I've noticed over the years, is that when it comes to eating, there are certain things that are so far out of my consciousness that I don't even recognize them as options. Like, for example, if we're out and about, whether we're traveling or whatever, and we need to eat, like, it doesn't occur to me that McDonald's are even in the vicinity of where I am. And I don't say that to be an elitist or whatever. Like,
no, you're just saying what's true for you. Yeah, you're just saying what's true for you, man.
Look, I know that there are, the issue of food is complex also, because there's class struggles too, right? Like, it's like, well, healthy food is more expensive sometimes. Like, there's obviously ways to get around that. But I feel for the single mother who's doing her best and who's buying her kids like McDonald's, like, because there's no other way. But I'm just saying, like, as someone who's cultivated these principles over the years, that's just the point that I've reached. And I think it's a very achievable goal for people. Like, the idea of becoming a person who just makes certain choices and not having to think about them,
Yes.
And I just think that's so important, and making it part of your identity should not be overlooked. And I think that's a really good point you bring up. Something else I wanted to just kind of touch on is you've mentioned the word diet a couple times in a couple different contexts throughout this conversation. And one of those contexts is like, oh, well, diets don't work. And I just kind of want to clarify what we mean by that and what you mean by that. Because obviously the word diet can just mean what it is that you eat, and you have a diet, I have a diet, everyone has a diet. But I think what you mean by that, and tell me if this metaphor works for you, but I was thinking about it in relation to the piano metaphor and learning the piano. Like, a diet would be like memorizing a piece of music and not knowing how to actually play the piano, but just memorizing a piece of music and being only able to play that piece of music. But if you don't have any notes, and if you come across another piece of music, you won't be able to play it. But what we're talking about here, the dietary philosophy that I think you espouse, and so do I, is something more like developing the skills to play the piano and having a deep understanding of the keys and the notes and how to play them, to where you can riff and you can play the piano. You can make up songs, right? And you can make up your own song. You can play any other piece of music wherever you are. And so I think that's the metaphor that I would use. How would you describe diet and define it?
Yeah, you just nailed it. When I say diet, I'm referring to the process by which people try to create the outcome that they're looking for, right? So most people try to diet their way towards health, which is really unfortunate because it's a short-term solution that often isn't considering the larger context that is your life and how to be healthy forever. It's usually not about overall health and wellness. It's typically about weight loss. And again, nothing wrong with losing weight if you have weight to lose. I absolutely support you in that effort. It's the process by which you go about creating that for yourself. And so what's so unfortunate about this industry is that as what we've talked about today is that your relationship with food and diet is so complex and intimate, right? It's so human. It's not just about the food that you eat. It's about your mindset, your psychology around eating, your emotional attachment to eating, your childhood development, how you were taught to eat as a little kid, the certain relationships and games and tendencies that you cultivated with yourself and with your family as a little kid. Culturally, what's pushed at us, what's convenience, all the things, like if you're a hard worker and a high performer and how you relieve yourself of stress, right? It's so complex and intricate. And what's unfortunate is that we all are living with that in one way, shape, or form. And yet the popular method to create health in our life, is dieting. And so the thing that we are trying, the solution that we look to is actually only making things worse, because what happens when you keep cramming for the test and you don't remember anything? Well, you got to keep trying over and over and over again. And so you're on this yo-yo on and off, and the process of dieting down, it usually sucks, right? It's usually restrictive, deprivational. People think that they have to push really hard for, 6 or 12 weeks or whatever in order to try to create this result. And it's going to suck. And they're going to have to sacrifice everything in order to create those results. And they might get the results. But again, they're sacrificing learning. They're not learning anything. Most people want to play Mozart on day one, and they can't play Mozart. So what happens when most people want to diet? Right? They're like, oh my God, I'm going to start working out 5 days a week. I'm going to eat super clean and healthy. They try to take on the habits that somebody who has been practicing this for 10 years would be doing, right? But they're trying to do it on day one before they've actually trained any of that into their lifestyle. They haven't made lifestyle choices that support their exercising 5 days a week. They don't know how to prepare healthy foods for themselves at every meal. They haven't mindfully practiced making sure that they're going grocery shopping, or they have their assistant ordering lunch from this location, or they haven't practiced traveling and vacationing and not going completely off the rails. They haven't taken on the actions and the attitude and the mindset of somebody who's been doing this for years, aka a master, right? Or somebody who's highly proficient. So beginners try to try to become the masters in this world of dieting on day one. And it's no surprise that they get overwhelmed and can't do it and then give up, right? So that's the problem. What we're talking about is learning, right? Skill development. You're going to, instead of doing this within a time-sensitive, with a time-sensitive outcome, what if you just took this on as a life practice, a way of getting to learn more about yourself and improving yourself daily, and also in the process becoming healthier, energizing yourself, feeling better, and opening up more self-discovery. And so that's what we mean by lifetime practice versus short-term outcomes. The other thing that you brought up is this idea of a certain diet that we espouse, right? Like for me, and what our company at EvolutionEat teaches is this idea of having an evolution diet, right? So what does that mean? Well, number one, it's the word evolution. I endorse eating the type of food that was available to us for the majority of our evolution as a species, right? In other words, the food that nature provides. And that's because our genes and our physiology evolved through the process of natural selection. And we're most adapted to be nourished with the food that we evolved around. And so for this reason, a lot of people compare our eating philosophy, or at least my eating style, and it sounds like yours too, Ruben, to a paleo or a primal way of eating. And that's generally right. But that said, and this is super important, I really want to highlight this, what I care about more is your personal evolution. I'm really not here to promote one specific diet as if there's one diet to rule them all. I'm here to help you fall in love with and cultivate your dream diet, right? So my job is to help you fall in love with the process of healthy eating, whatever that means to you, so that you can live this way forever, right? if a jazz pianist isn't going to love playing classical music all the time because they have a certain style and they have a certain personality. And I would want to, if I was an instructor, I would want to honor that person and their personality and their style. So who the hell am I to tell you that you have to eat a certain way to be successful? The number one indication of success in this area is consistency, which means that you have to love what you're doing. So whether that's paleo, primal, keto, vegetarian, or simply balanced, whatever you want for yourself, I can help you create that relationship with food whereby you're showing up for yourself consistently on a daily basis, feeding yourself what you need and building a lifestyle of eating habits and other healthy habits that support you living that way intuitively. And that's what I mean by personal evolution, right? Learning how to approach your diet is far more important than the specifics of the diet itself. It's said in another way, like the features of the diet are far less important than the process towards mastering your diet, right? You can know every single detail in the world, every single bit of information about the nutritional this and that and the breakdown of this and that. But if you don't know how to train that into your everyday experience, then it's all for nothing, right? We have infinite information available to us on the internet. How come we haven't gotten healthier? Well, it's because its information isn't enough. We have to learn, we have to have a system that allows us to trust in that process and approach it as a process, not just as a goal that we're trying to accomplish, but as a process that we're giving ourselves over to, that we're learning something about ourselves, as a skill that we get to develop through that process, learning more and more and more about ourselves, and that we want to practice every day, that we look forward to practicing every day. And that's what I've dedicated my life's work to doing, is creating that system. That's what we call EvolutionEat, and helping people literally fall in love with this part of their lives, where most people relate to it as, God, just this shitty thing that they have to do because they know that they're supposed to look good and be healthy, right? What if you actually loved that? Or at least related to yourself as somebody who does this for him or herself and like finds pride in that, right? That's what I'm here to help you.
And you've created a course around these principles and around cultivating this skill, and that's kind of the main way that you're able to interact with your clients and with people who want to change the way they eat. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. We have a 6-month coaching program called EvolutionEat 180 that's my life's work, man. I mean, I've put everything into this. This is our 6-month methodology. It's 6 months because this sort of stuff, this is about the long term. You know, it's way less sexy to sell the long term. It's way easier to say, let's do the month-long challenge where you lose you lose 15 pounds as quickly as possible, right? And there's enough of that shit out there. What I really care about is skill development and long-term adoption. I really want to help people transform the way that they eat so that they never have to invest in this area of their life again. And that's the way that we coach our members. It's an interactive program. There's an everyday accountability. There's live coaching elements on a weekly basis. There's our whole 6-month methodology where instead of trying to take on everything all at once, we help you master one habit at a time, right? So that, again, this is towards building a lifestyle so that by the end of the program, even if you haven't created all the results that you're looking for, what you have created is this master lifestyle that will get you to the finish line, whether that's with us or without us, within the 6 months or beyond the 6 months. When you have that lifestyle that's yours, that you intuitively wake up to and sink into, flow into on an everyday basis, the results will come. And that's what I'm mostly interested in. So yes, that's the way that we work with our members. And that's how we've helped, thousands of people from around the world transform their lives and their bodies. And it's through this coaching program that I live for every single day.
Well, I got to say, man, I was curious, and so I went through most of your course, and it's literally the course that I would have created if I would have continued on that path because I mean, it's just, it aligns so well with how I view food and how I view, it's just my dietary philosophy, I would say. And what that is like, there's no one diet. Taking into account bio-individuality, everyone's particular metabolism, constitution, etc. And you just approach it from a holistic standpoint. You're not dogmatic about any particular philosophy or diet or whatever. And I just think it's so accessible and it's so needed, like knowing how to eat is one of the most useful skills you can cultivate. You're eating all the time.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned that, you mentioned food addiction earlier. And I would say in a literal sense, we're all addicted to food because we need to eat it every single day. Like, so I think the useful way of looking at it is, okay, that being what it is, now let's find the food that makes us feel good, not just emotionally, but physically. Let's find the food that makes us robustly healthy and that adds to our well-being and then improves our lives. And if we're going to be addicted to food, let's eat that food. You know what I mean? and I think your course really helps to illuminate the principles that allow people to do that.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. And yeah, it's as far as like life skills are concerned, knowing what to eat is at the top of them, but also knowing how to eat, right? As we've talked about today, it's not just about what, because the internet has given us the answers for that. It's knowing how to make that real for yourself, how to actually create the lifestyle, how to go about the process of going from diet to lifestyle, right? How do I make that true for myself? How do I build these habits? How do I overcome these unhealthy habits? How do I make this my life? How do I start identifying as a person who's being healthy? So it's knowing how to eat as well, which is super important.
I agree with you.
Obviously, you and I have had this conversation. We've been really excited to have this conversation for a while. And one thing that I've done in the background is go ahead and kind of distill the main principles that we teach in that 6-month program, because 6 months is a long time, and it takes 6 months to go through all the material and through all that practice. So I've gone ahead and distilled the core principles of that and created a 7-day online course for all of your listeners and audience members. And I know that we'll put links in the show notes and everything, but I might as well say it here. You can. And anybody who's listening who has really gotten a lot of value out of this conversation and wants to dive deeper into your personal development in this way and start learning how to actually build healthy eating habits that last forever, that don't just have you losing weight in a few weeks, but have you keeping it off for the long term because it's something that you care about and practice, then you can just go to evolutioneat.com/think, grow, prosper, and you can grab this like 5-hour free training, which is really awesome. And we're also going to put together a live webinar for everybody who's interested and who wants to connect with me personally. So all the information for that will be on that page as well. And man, I just want to thank you so much for being you and for fearlessly exploring this topic when nobody else will in this space for some reason. You know what I mean? Like it's bizarre to me. And I hope that this conversation starts a cascade of ones like it, because we're in this world of personal development. We're not talking about this foundational, fundamental piece. And from what I've seen with the people that we've worked with over the years is that for many of them, it's often what kickstarts their personal development journey in a whole new way. It's by transforming this area of their life. It's often what has them creating, the business that they always wanted, or the relationship that they always wanted, or the lifestyle that has them living on their terms and quitting the job that they, that's stealing from them as opposed to nourishing them. It's often when you invest in this part of yourself and you literally see and feel on the inside what transformation means, that you know yourself capable of then going and creating that other stuff, the career, the business, the relationship, the project on the outside. So I know that I know that there's so much for everybody by working on this part of themselves, and by I guess the one takeaway that I hope everybody will leave with is that your health is a lifelong practice. Whether you acknowledge that or not, it's a lifelong practice, and it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be difficult to do it well, but it does take mindfulness, does take some effort, and for anybody who doesn't believe that it's possible for them, I just ask you to consider any other area of your life where you've created a result for yourself that you didn't think was possible, or you became highly proficient at either a skill or a craft or a career that at the beginning felt like a foreign concept to you, right? And to see how those same principles that had you being successful there, you can apply to your health and to your diet.
Everything is connected to everything else. And so when you get one thing right, it affects so many other things in your life. And diet is definitely one of those huge bottlenecks that when you fix it, you're able to affect so many other aspects of your life positively. So I'm excited, man, and I hope people get some value from this conversation and are able to connect with you to take their journey further. Daniel, appreciate you being here and sharing with us.
Ruben, I thank you so much for having me on, and for really believing in our mission and why this work is so important in the world. And I'm just so excited to share all this cool stuff that we have lined up for your audience. So for everybody who's listening, we'll be doing a live training that you can find on evolutioneat.com/think, grow, prosper. And you'll be able to grab the free online course there as well. So thank you, Ruben, for sharing that with your people. And thank you, everybody, for listening.